Good evening, everybody. Come on in the room. Good evening and welcome to Transformation Tuesday. How is everybody doing tonight? Come on in the room and I'm going to get started in just a minute. For those that don't know me, I am Alicia Davis. Thank you for joining. Those that will watch this on the replay, welcome and thank you for joining. Please share, invite somebody in the room tonight because there is a word from the Lord. There is just a few things, few points I would like to share with you guys tonight. So we're going to give everybody just a couple seconds, a few seconds to come on in the room, and we will get started. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I got what I needed. All right, y'all. So come on in the room. Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody. All right. We're going to get started on tonight. Just wanted to stop in and just share a couple things with you on tonight. And so that's what we're going to do. All right. And so I don't know if you saw that title, but it says, "Is faith your anchor?" So we're going to talk about something that happened in the Bible. We're going to go over to Acts, the 27th chapter. I'm going to share a few scriptures with you, and then I'm going to share some life application that has happened. Because God will use anything to speak, right? He can use anything He wants to speak, right? Okay. So if you will, welcome everybody. If you will, turn with me to Acts, the 27th chapter. I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. Acts the 27th chapter, and I'm gonna start at verse 33. And I'm kind of gonna skim through this, kind of go through it. Yes, hey apostle. I'm kind of gonna go through it, but in your time, in your leisure, read Acts the 27th chapter in its entirety. And even before, because it talks about Paul. Paul had been in prison. Hey, good evening. Paul had been in prison and ended up on this boat, on this ship with some prisoners. And they went from one ship and were having seeing some little high winds and things on the water, was transferred to another ship. And in the other ship, it still was slow sailing. They were coming upon winds and hurricanes and storms and all of that. But in the midst of that storm, in the midst of the storm, first of all, he was in a storm because he had been accused of something and placed in jail. Okay. Then he goes, blessings, blessings, and congratulations. Then he goes on the ship in the midst of another storm, headed to another storm because he was going to stand trial for a crime that he hadn't committed. Okay. But that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother message. But when we start at verse 33, I'm going to read this and then we're going to relevate a little bit. And I have some points and some things I want to share with you and just want you to think about so that you can be ready. Okay, so that you can be ready. And let me first say, this whole message came from, can somebody say back to the basics? Just say back to the basics in the chat box. Because on Sunday, I just walked through the room and passed by as Sunday school was going on, and it blessed my whole life. Okay, it blessed my whole life. And while sitting there just listening, I stopped to listen. This whole message came about. And so let's go to Acts the 27th chapter, verse 33 through 38. And this is the New Living Translation. I may not go all the way to 38, but let's see. It says that just as the dawning of day, just as the day was dawning, Paul urged everyone to eat. Now let me back up. They had been on this boat. They had been on this ship for 2 weeks, for 14 days, in the storms, in a whole hurricane, typhoon, and all. They hadn't eaten because, number one, are you gonna be eating when it's all this turmoil and all these things going on? They hadn't eaten, and some of them hadn't eaten because they were prisoners and food was not even made available to them. Okay, and so during this time, the Lord has spoke to Paul and told Paul that they were, no one on the ship was gonna die, but it will indeed be shipwrecked. Nobody was going to die, but they were indeed going to be shipwrecked. So when we get down to verse 33, it states that just as the day was dawning, Paul urged everyone to eat. You've been so worried, because it was many of them that was worried whether they were going to live or die, worry about what was going to happen. He said, you've been so worried that you haven't touched food for 2 weeks. Now, this wasn't a fast, because that's where you plan not to eat. This was a different thing because of the storms, but people were worrying. They were worried about fearful of whether they were going to lose their lives, right? And so verse 44 says, he says, please eat something now for your own good. I'm coming back to that. For not a hair on your heads will perish. Then he took some bread, gave thanks to God before them all, and broke up off a piece and ate it. Then everyone was encouraged and began to eat. All 276 of them who were on board. And after eating, the crew lightened the ship further by throwing the cargo of wheat overboard. Okay, I'm going to stop right there for just a minute. I'm going to stop right there for a minute because there's so much in that. And even as Paul did, what I'm urging you to do after this message for tonight, tomorrow, and the days to come is the same thing that I urge many days when I'm on here. It is time to stay in the presence of God. It is time to stay in the word, to pray, to fast, to meditate, to decree and declare his word back to yourself, to eat the word like they had to eat. He urged them to eat, and I'm urging you to eat the word so that when the storm comes, you ready. You're not worried. You're not on a worry fast, but you're ready and you're calm in the midst of the storm. Can somebody say calm in the midst of the storm? Somebody type in the chat box, calm in the midst of the storm. Come on, calm in the midst of the storm. And so I want to go back because I had to, like I said, I was minding my business, about to eat some breakfast, and got caught up in the Sunday school lesson. Okay, got caught up in the Sunday school lesson, and in the lesson, I went back and I took myself some notes. One of the things in the lessons they talked about was how we weather life storms. It reflects whether we truly have confidence in God's faithfulness. So how we weather the storms of life shows whether faith is really our anchor. So is faith really your anchor? Is fear your anchor? Is your flesh your anchor? Is your unforgiveness and bitterness and anger and envy and jealousy and wrath your anchor? What is your anchor? Because when faith is your anchor, I'm going to show you just what's going to happen, okay? And so, how do you remain calm in the midst of a storm? How did Paul remain calm in the midst of the storm? One of the ways he remained calm in the midst of the storm was he was able to commune with God. He was in posture where he can hear from the Father, where they said the angel of the Lord visited him and told him that it was going to be all right. It was going to be all right. And so he relied on what he heard, but he also had experience. Can somebody say experience? Because if you've lived long enough, and when you keep on living, there will be situations and circumstances that not only you have gone through, but others around you have gone through that can be the example of that it's going to be okay. The word says that God will never leave or forsake us. So if he never leaves or forsakes us, the storm that's happening, don't you know that he already knew it was coming? Don't you know that he holds today, tomorrow, and forevermore? Don't you know that he gonna walk you right through it? If he has to wrap you in his arms, because he is the comforter. If he has to accelerate you, if he has to provide for you, if he needs to keep you, if he needs to sustain you, whatever he needs to do, he is God. Okay. And so, you know, Paul has some experiences. He has some experiences that taught him that he can pull back on, that he can reflect on, that reminded him of what's on the other side of a storm. And so we can use, they gave an acronym. They gave an acronym for calm that I want to share with you today. I'm going to give you a few more points and I'm out your hair. Okay. And so they gave an acronym for calm, and it almost took me out. It almost took me out. Okay. And so calm stands for calling on God. And it said calling through on God during crisis, but I'm gonna change that, calling on God each and every day, because as one of Pastor Daniel Henley, he always says that prayer is not where prayer is where the battle is won. Prayer is preparation. You know, prayer is not preparation for the battle. Prayer is where the battle is won. And so if we've already won before the battle comes, if we're already postured and we're already in position, when the winds and waves come, we won't be moved. We can be calm right in the middle of the storm. And so faith is the anchor. It's not a crutch. It's not something we just, oh, well, I just guess I better have faith. And some of us say we have faith, but the test of your faith comes when the storms really happen. And I got a testimony to share in just a minute. I got a testimony to share in a minute. But it says to call on God. We're going to call on God. That's C. Call on God. A is we're going to anticipate. I'm going to say we're going to anticipate and expect God to step in, because he never leave or forsake us. He's always with us. So we're going to call on God. See, we're going to anticipate and we're going to expect him to step in and rescue us. Okay. L, we're going to listen to his instructions. And then M is we're going to make known his promises. Okay, what does all that mean? We're going to call on him, but not just when it's a storm, but each and every day. See, it's the relationship. It's the relationship that helps to build that faith muscle, to help to build that level of faith. So come what may, we already know that we covered. We already know that we got the heaven backing us. We already know that there is a host of angels encamped all about us. We already know that nothing shall by any means harm us unless we dash our foot against a stone. We already know that we are blessed and highly favored. We already know that we are kept and he rocks us in his bosom. We already know it. But can we pull on it? Are we anchored enough that it holds us steadfast and immovable when the storm comes? Okay. So we're going to call on God. We know that God answers, just like with Paul. God answered him by sending an angel of the Lord, by sending a messenger. Okay. And so and as the days continued on, because sometimes there are things in our life that happen. And if it's just a one-day situation, okay, that was a lot. But when things seem to linger, or when things continue to go on and it don't look like it's going to change, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. You fasted, you prayed, you've been standing on the word. And the more you fast and pray, the more you stand, it looks like it's opposite to what you're believing. But can you stay anchored? Can you stay anchored and know that you know that it's not by might and it's not by power, but it's going to be by the Spirit of the living God. We may not know, it may not come the way we think it's going to come, it may not happen the way we think it's going to happen, but it surely is going to be, in the name of Jesus. And so calling on God, we talking about storms today. So calling on God even in a storm is the help that you need. Calling on God is key to us weathering the storms well. Okay, so then we're going to anticipate, and we're going to expect. We're going to be an expectation, because see, Paul knew, he knew that God had already told him, the angel of the Lord had come told him that there was not going to be any loss of life, but there was going to be a shipwreck. Now, something was going to happen, but y'all was going to be okay. Okay. And so it is God in his mercy, it is God in his love for us, that he will prepare us even in places that we don't even realize we're being prepared, right? And so, but Paul was able to remain calm because he expected to live and not die. Why? Because he believed the report of the Lord. His trials in the past had already taught him how to surrender his will, his emotions, and his plans to God. So when the waves started coming, he didn't say, well, no, I'm just going to, run. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. He was still. Now, in that good Sunday school lesson on Sunday, both of my uncles was on there, and they both gave an example of a storm or something happening. Now, they don't even know. They preached the whole word and didn't even know. But one of them mentioned about, how when there are crowds of people, and when there are crowds of people and something happens, people tend to do what? They tend to run. They tend to run. But when you run, you've seen on the news examples of when people just start running because people are running, that people end up trampled, people end up dying and everything because they didn't know what was happening. They just ran and it ended up being catastrophic. My other uncle came back as they were preaching and didn't know they was preaching. My other uncle came back and he said he lives in California. And so he said, well, brother, that's just like when earthquakes happen. Because in California, he was like, we're known to have earthquakes. He said, and people tend to run when there are earthquakes, when that's not the time to run. They run out of fear, but they don't. When you run, when you remain calm and you stand fast and you don't move, then you're able to come up with a plan. You're able to get some strategy on which way to go. Because if you run, you may run right into a crack. You may run and fall. You may run and stumble. But when you're able to remain calm, you're able to get strategy. As they ate on the boat in 33 through 38, as they ate, they were able to get nourishment. They were able to get their thoughts together. They were able to think clearly. They were able to think clearly so that they can make wise decisions, so they can come up with a plan and a strategy to keep everybody safe. Okay, I'm gonna move on. And so then the L in listening to God's instructions. When we study the word, when we meditate on the word, when we have our scriptures that we decree and declare and that we hide in our heart, when we have those things, they can come up. We can, if they're in us, they can come up when they're needed, right? They can come up and we can stand on them when they're needed. And so we talked about prayer and Bible study, fasting, spending time with the Lord, our relationship, our tenacity, that we're going to trust God, that we're going to have faith in God no matter what. helps us to defeat the worry that they was doing for 2 weeks and wouldn't eat. Helps us defeat the fear. Helps us defeat the enemy coming to whisper in what this is, that this is not gonna work. You know, all the lies that he come try to tell you, that this is, you not gonna make it through this. He is a lie and a defeated foe. And so then the M is to make known God's promises. Now, a lot of times, you know, you've heard of people praying. You've heard of people praying, and it's like they praying, Lord, please, God, if you will, you know, Lord, what? Yes, and we do, but we have authority that we can just thank Him that it's done. He is our provider. He is our way. He is the miracle worker. He's the burden bearer. He's the heavy load sharer. He is everything. He is omnipotent. He is omniscient. He is everything. He is faithful. He is faithful. And so we have authority. Thank you. We have kingdom authority. But we don't understand and know that authority. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But even in this, we pray the word. If we have the word, we remind God of His word. That's what moves things. That's what makes things start to happen. We don't have to beg God. We don't have to beg God. The word is filled with promises. The word is filled with promises. So whatever you're going through, go grab you a few and stand on them. Go grab you a few and decree and declare them. Go grab you a few and read them until you feel differently. Read them until the fear goes. Read them until the change happens in you, where you're able to stand anchored and not be tossed to and fro. Okay, so we going sometimes, you know, and sometimes the storms come and they ain't even for us. They're not for our good. But because we are examples of Christ in the earth, we are the examples. And I know I heard, I was in a conversation the other day and somebody was saying, stop watching me. Like, why are you watching me? Don't watch me. You better watch God, look at me. But sometimes we are the only example that people have to see. Sometimes our life, how we walk and talk every day, ministers to people that ain't even never been in a church. Sometimes the compassion, the kindness, sometimes them watching you in the midst of a storm is what people need, that's going to help them have some faith and to put their anchor down and not to keep on waddling in fear and waddling in worry and turmoil, you know. And so when you go on to 39 to 44, verses 39 to 44 of that chapter, they woke up, the morning came, the morning dawned, and they thought, you know what, it looks like we're close to the coast. They done ate, they got a strategy, they done took off some stuff to lighten up the load of the boat. And so they didn't know if they was gonna make it though, so they started, you know, they they cut off the anchors so that they lowered down the rudders, and so they headed toward the shore. But they hit a shoal and the ship ran aground too soon. Long story short, they became shipwrecked. And so the waves were beginning to break the boat and everything apart. And so the soldiers were on the boat, and their bright idea was, so we can live, we're gonna kill the prisoners to make sure, and we want to kill them because we don't want to make sure that they don't swim ashore and escape. Now, in the midst of a whole storm that's life or death, they were worried about killing prisoners so they don't escape or make it to shore. You know, there are times that when the storms happen in your life, people see that as an opportunity to try to kill you, to try to steal, to try to destroy, to try to discourage, to try to hurt you, to talk about you. to go behind your back and cause chaos and confusion. But when God said to Paul, it was going to be all right, it was going to be all right. And so what happened is the commanding officer wanted to spare Paul because Paul had been the one encouraging them all while they were on the ship, all the whole 14 days while they were in the storm. Paul, the prisoner, was encouraging the soldiers and even the commander, the commanding officer, along with the other prisoners. So the commanding officer said, no, I want to spare Paul. So he didn't let the soldiers carry out their plan to kill the prisoners. Then he ordered all who could swim, prisoners and all, to jump overboard first and make for land. And the others held on to planks and debris from the broken ship. So everyone escaped safely to shore. When you are going through a storm, and I just got a few points and we done, y'all. But when you are going through a storm, you don't even have to worry about the soldiers that's trying to kill you off. You don't even have to worry about the people that are watching and they got something to say about how you responding to the storm because they don't understand the calm in the storm. You don't have to worry about the people that go behind your back and try to plot, plan, and scheme against you, because God will always bring a commanding officer. He will always have a ram in the bush. He will always have somebody right there in the right place in the right time that will speak on your behalf. He will have somebody in the right place at the right time that will shut down the chaos and confusion because they know your character. They know from which you come from. They know that your soul is anchored in the Lord. We'll talk about that in a minute. They know who you are and whose you are. And they won't even stand for the foolishness. That's a whole nother, in the name of Jesus. And so they ordered everybody that could swim to go ahead and get to land. They were shipwrecked, but everyone escaped. So I just got a few points. I just got a few points for you so that you can make sure that your faith is anchored. You can make sure that faith is your anchor. And so, we have to be careful that we don't waste our faith. We have to be careful that we don't waste our faith. We got to make sure that we are using our faith, that we're not just talking about it, but we really are about it. We got to make sure that we don't spend time worrying, murmuring, complaining when we can be standing in faith. Faith is a protection. Faith is a portal. Faith is a place. Faith is safety. And so we have to be careful not to waste our faith. And also we have to be careful not to waste our faith fighting battles that we don't even have to fight. Fighting battles we don't even have to fight. Paul didn't even have to fight when they was planning to kill him and the soldiers because God had already sent somebody to fight on their behalf. And so we don't have to fight battles. Sometimes we might need to be like Joseph. Like we don't have to fight, but you may need to run in that situation and move on away from Potiphar's wife. Move on away from that chaos and confusion right there. Move on away from that mess. Move on away from those things that and places and people that try to keep you down. Move on from the group that ain't operating in faith, but they walking in fear. You need to be surrounded by faith, okay? And so that's point number one. Also, your level of faith determines your level of wealth, your level of peace, your level of joy, your level of everything. Your faith level determines what level you're going to be in every area of your life. Next point, because I can go somewhere there, but we're going to come back another day on that one. When you're calm in the midst of the storm, God will have you in a place operating, doing, being in a way that doesn't make sense to you or other people. That doesn't make sense to you or other people. You may be saying, I don't even know why. I don't even know. But this is what it is. You'll be surprised how calm you are in the midst of a storm. And when I say calm, I don't mean that it don't bother you. I don't mean that it may not be hard. I don't mean that whatever it is may not hurt. I don't mean that you don't have emotions about it. But there is a peace and a calmness that only can come from our faith in God. And when you're able to rest in him, when you're able to be anchored, when you are truly anchored in him, it shows up in how you operate when the storm comes. When people talk about a storm and they talk about the eye of the storm, the center of the storm is peaceful. The center of the storm, there is peace. The winds and the waves and everything else is all around the outside of the storm. But in the center of the storm, it's peaceful. It's peaceful. In the eye of the storm, it's peaceful. And so, next point. We're gonna, if your faith, you got to be in the centered and anchored. Because if your faith is lopsided, everything in your life will be lopsided. So you cannot have faith that God is going to wake you up in the morning, but you don't have faith that he going to bring you through the situation. You can't have faith in your job, and you don't have faith that God is going to provide for you even if you don't have a job. Like we can't be lopsided with our faith. We can't believe that God gonna do it on one hand, but in these other areas, we don't even surrender it to him or give it to him because we don't know what's gonna happen. Okay, so if your faith is lopsided, your whole life is gonna be lopsided. All right, and then the next is don't let your faith be misplaced. You got to make sure that your faith is intact. Don't allow insecurities. Don't allow fear. Don't allow other people. We got to get delivered from people. Don't allow other people to cause you to move in ways that take you out of your place of faith. And then lastly, I want to share this. The danger. And I was talking to my spiritual father today, and he shared this. The danger of misplaced faith will leave you tired, broke, lost, and confused. When your faith is not anchored, when your anchor is not down, when you are not steadfast and immovable, when your soul is not anchored in the Lord, misplaced faith in other things will leave you tired, broke, lost, and confused. Is your faith anchored? Is your faith anchored? Is your faith anchored? So I want you to check yourself. This is a self-test today, a self-examination. And so today, as my family, we're going through, we had a celebration. We're about to do a homegoing celebration of my stepfather, who went to be with the Lord last week, a few days ago. And so every single day, because my faith anchor, every single day, I wake up with a song. The Lord, Holy Spirit, wake me up and he drop a song in my spirit. And all during the day, he may drop something, he may say something, or he may whatever. And I'm gonna tell y'all before we, in just a minute, I'm gonna talk about this song that came up and what the Lord told me to share with you about it. because we get to a place in faith where sometimes we are we say we have faith, we say we're believing and standing, but there's a place that we're going to talk about with our faith real briefly, and then I'm going to give you a testimony. And so today, as I was working, I can hear the song, My Soul Has Been Anchored. Okay. This is by Douglas Miller. Go look it up. It's a good old time. Old time will tear the whole church up. Okay. Because when you think about where you've been through and what God has brought you through, you know, let me stop there because I was about to go. Okay, so let me just go to this. So when I was hearing the song, I kept hearing two parts of the song. And one of them was the bridge, if you will. And it says, I realize that sometimes in this life, we're going to be tossed by the waves and the currents that seem so fierce. But in the word of God, I got an anchor, and it keeps me steadfast and immovable despite the tide. Okay? That's faith. That's anchored faith. So when he's talking about his soul is anchored, his faith in God is anchored. His soul and his faith is anchored in God. And so it talks about though the billows may roll and the breakers may dash, I shall not sway because he holds me fast. So he holds me fast. So the dark the day, clouds in the sky, I know it's all right because Jesus is nigh. Okay? You crush me down, but Jesus picks me up. He sticks right by me when the going gets tough. And my soul is anchored. Now, there is another part that even for me, when I sing it, I almost can't make it through. Because it says, but if the storms don't cease, and just in case the winds keep on blowing in my life, my soul has been anchored in the Lord. So I was listening to that. And today when I listened to it, because I pulled it up and listened to it, but when it got to that part of if the storms don't cease and if the winds keep on blowing, I said, well, no, I don't really agree with that. I don't agree with that. And I understand the song. I understand that that was a declaration of his faith. But there is a place I want to make sure that I mention tonight, that because of that kingdom authority that I mentioned before, we don't have to accept that the storm is not going to cease and the wind's going to keep on blowing. Now, I know what the song meant, but this is for somebody, because you have authority to speak to the storm, to speak to the mountain. When you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, the word says you can tell the mountain to go into the river, to go into the lake. You can tell the mountain to come down. You can tell the storm to cease. You can command the winds to wind. You can command the winds to stop blowing. When Jesus was in the boat and Peter and the disciples were in the boat, he said, peace, be still. And the same power that raised Jesus from the dead and he ascended to heaven and sits on the right hand of the Father is the same power that dwells within us. We don't realize, and we still have not understood how powerful we really are. The word works. Use your authority. So when the wind starts to blow, peace, be still. Stay calm in the middle of the storm. Don't let anything move you or toss you to and fro, because I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it looks like. God is going to bring you through. Now, let me give you a testimony, because I want to tell you about somebody. And, we have so many examples in this word We have so many examples to pull on, no matter what the situation is. Abraham is the father of faith. And so, and God has had me, and I keep saying, like, Lord, I'm on Transformation Tuesday, and it always tends to go back to, we got to have faith in God. We got to trust in God. And there have been times I feel like, Lord, I feel like I'm repeating myself. And he said, repeat it until they get it. Repeat it until they hear it. Faith is always going to be the message. Faith is always going to be a part of the instructions. Faith is the root. Faith is the anchor of it all. And so I want to share this with you because this was about a lady. And so, you know, there are those that we know in the Bible, those that have names. And then there are these unknown teachers. There are these people who teach you by walking. And it's been said to me, like, I thank you so much. I got to call it. I thank you so much because you don't know, just you being you, what that has done for me. And I'm just living my everyday life. So when we talk about when you live your everyday life, you know, you do stuff and you may not even know what you're doing and how you blessing other people. But I want to share this because she doesn't really even know how powerful she really is. And so during this process, my mother, and she can get me later, but this is for you. And so during this process, because she not new to this, okay? She not new to this. We've been in this place before, just with a different loved one. And so in the midst of it all, she was extremely calm. And so to some, it appeared weird. It appeared abnormal that she was calm. But to me, it was okay because the Lord began to share with me and show me it was because she was anchored. It was because she was anchored. It didn't mean that her emotions and feelings weren't involved in there or whatever, but she's been this way before. She got some history to pull on. And so in her response to the storm, what she didn't know and what others around didn't know, that they were getting a lesson. They were getting a message in action. They were getting a message played out in real life. And so what is showed at the end of the day, no matter who had to say what is showed in the middle at the end of the day is that her faith is anchored. That no matter come what may, no matter how hard it has been to walk through these last few days and for what we got to come, that it don't matter because her soul and her faith is anchored. And because she's anchored in the Lord, he gonna take care of everything else. He's the keeper. He's the sustainer. He's the lifter of a head. He is everything that we need. And so I want to say tonight, thank you, Mother, because you showed me how that even we talk about and we look at our bloodline many times to see what we got. Is it diabetes? Is it high blood pressure? We look at the bloodline because we seeing things in our life that don't quite look like the way God said it should be. So we want to get rid of generational curses and we want to get rid of that. But there are times that the Lord will show you the blessings in the bloodline. The Lord will show you the character traits in the bloodline. And that's what I was reminded of over these last few days, because I have tenacity, but it's in the bloodline. I have faith and it's in the bloodline. You know, I have joy even in the midst of sorrow, but it's in the bloodline. You know, I have an example of what it is to keep on going no matter what it is, because she's not walking alone, because the pouring footstep says that even there are times that God carries us. So the prints that we see, they're his and not ours, right? And so she been preaching by her walk. She's been preaching by her attitude. She's been preaching even with the things that she don't do that she want to do. But she's been preaching. And what it has done is for not just for me as a reminder of who we are and to even identify where some things in myself come from, just reminded because I knew it. But it also has been a living message to even the generations that are coming after, to my children, her grandchildren, to the great grandchildren, to the nieces and nephews, to her brothers and sisters, and even her mama. Hey, Aunt Virginia. And so your life is a living message. Make sure you are living well. Make sure you're not caught up in doing what you feel is best or going way to the left. But all you got to do is stay anchored. Let the Lord fight the battles. Walk this thing out, because you know what happens? At the end of the storm, there's always another side. Just like when Paul and the prisoners and the soldiers, they may have been shipwrecked, but everyone was saved. Everybody's life was spared. So because we have been given this gift of a day, because if you wake up in the morning, you've been given the gift of tomorrow, make it count. You are walking, breathing, living message. What are you saying? Are you teaching and showing somebody how to be anchored in their faith? Are you showing somebody what it's like not to trust in God? Are you operating from a place that is you're responding to what's happening in front of you? Or have you taken your seat in heavenly places? And are you ruling and reigning and living from heaven down to earth? We are in this world, but we're not of this world. So I pray that something tonight has been said that has been a blessing to you. I needed to publicly say thank you to my mother for being the example. And it don't mean you can't cry. It don't mean you don't have moments where your emotions come out. But at the core of who you are anchored, and your faith is anchored in the Lord. And that's always an example that I will follow. So thank you, and I love you much. And so I got you because she my girl. And so I pray that something has been said tonight that has been a blessing to you. Go back and read Acts the 27th chapter. Do the self-examination to see where you're anchored. Are you really anchored in faith? What is your anchor? So that you can make sure that when the storm happens in your life, whatever it's going to be, that you're ready and you're able to remain calm in the storm. You're able to be calm in the storm. You're able to call on God. You're able to anticipate and expect him to step in and to be with you and to take care of you, because that's what he does, and he does it real good. You're going to listen to his instructions, not when the storm comes, but we're reading our word now. We're studying our word now, so we already know. And then we're going to exercise that faith in action by following those instructions when the storm happens. And we're going to make known his promises. We're going to put him in remembrance of his word. And we're going to go on and see what the end is going to be. Because God still has much, much, much that he wants to do in and through our lives. And he really wants to be able to use us as his remnant to help build, rebuild, and expand the kingdom. Will you be one? Will you be able to be used? Will he be able to use you? Have you made room in your vessel? Do you have the capacity to receive and to pour out? These are some things to think about over the next week. Listen, I'll be back with y'all next week, same time, same place, if the Lord is willing. And until then, check your faith. Make sure it's anchored. Let's go on and be faith walkers and faith movers. It's still the fourth quarter. It ain't time to give up. It ain't time to stop. I'm still finishing what I started, storms and all. But it's the fourth quarter. Let's finish this year strong. We don't have but about 46 days left. Today is 319. Make them count. Make them count. So I will see you guys here next week, same time, same place. I love you all. Blessings to you all. And I'll see you soon. Peace.